baby. Monday. What is up, everybody, and welcome into the DNVR Nuggets podcast. Still bringing the energy, despite just being the two-man game today. We are presented, as always, by DraftKings Sportsbook, America's top-rated sportsbook app. Use promo code DNVR whenever you sign up. Bet along with us. You might be like me, who long ago betted on the Colorado Avalanche to win the Stanley Cup Championship, and today you collected a nice payday. Actually, not that nice. Their odds were pretty
They were the favorites.
They were the favorites all year round, but still.
More money's better than no money.
That's so right. More money is better than no money. I'm joined today, two-man game, Brendan Vogt.
Was fortunate enough to be here last night, man, when the moment went down. And I think a lot of folk have waited a long time, not just to see their Avs, but in this building, to see this building look the way it did last night. I'm still riding that high, man.
It really is unbelievable. We're going to spend first segment talking about the Avs winning and all of that it means for DNVR, all that it means for the Colorado Avalanche, all that it means for the city of Denver. And more importantly, I think we're going to talk about and maybe debate what it means for the Denver Nuggets, because we are talking about the Kroenkes now walking away with 2.5 professional titles. I mean, we count the Mammoth. It's a full title. It's just I don't know what that league is. I couldn't tell you. Are there 3 teams in the professional lacrosse league? Are there 30? Is it very competitive? Do these guys have side jobs? I couldn't tell you anything about it.
I don't know the answer to any of those questions.
8 teams. Oh, super producer, yeah, here, filling in for Kale, and he has actual information here. So they have side jobs. What kind of side jobs you here? Do you know?
They play lacrosse in the summer.
Okay.
And then there's a guy that sells like carpeting.
There's a guy that sells carpet. That's
actually like a whole story where this guy had to miss the championship because he couldn't take any more time off.
No way. Well, then we're definitely counting this as a half championship.
Yeah, we'll go half.
If a player missed the NLL championship game because he had taken too much time off during the season and could no longer take time off of his real job.
Sorry, 9 teams.
And
there's 9 teams.
Their
Right,
star player, and he's on a business trip this weekend. In San
14
Diego.
teams. Oh, wow.
I did well.
So, yeah, here came with the info, then corrected himself twice. That's very good. So there's 14 teams. This does feel – don't you ever wonder, though? Like, not I'm trying to take anything away from the Mammoth, man. They're the best in the world at what they do.
Seems like you are.
I'm about to.
Yeah.
So don't you think – I'm actually going to be way worse. Sometimes when you go back and you think about Bob Cousy winning all those titles and there was a 7-team league, and I'm not saying it's to that degree, but it is on the scale. It's on the scale of that.
That's
degree.
how a sport starts. And
it is how a sport starts.
It becomes – as we know many of them now, they are just that.
They tell these stories all the time, and they're like, Wilt, he would party all night long and then hop into a tiny little car and drive 1,000 miles so he could play in a game. That's what kind of athlete he was. I'm like, yeah, it is what kind of athlete it was. Also, what kind of league it was.
Yeah, exactly. I remember when lacrosse first started, guys were like, they were barbers on the side.
Yeah.
They're
right.
They would bring their clippers to tournaments. You never knew.
To tournaments even. Man, that's so great. I can't believe we got that.
Tournament.
In segment 2, we're going to talk about the pressers today. Christian Braun, Peyton Watson, Ismael Kamagate. They all met with the media today, and it was great to get to talk to these guys. It's always, not a meaty, I would say, press conference, but it was like I want to call it sizing these guys up.
Yeah, sure.
Both physically, but also I think more importantly, sizing them up and just kind of getting a sense of who they are. So we'll have that to talk about. And then in segment 3, I apologize. We're breaking the seal. We have to talk about Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and how they might balance the power in the NBA. So we'll get to that in segment 3. But we'll start, as you were mentioning, the Colorado Avalanche. Pull it off last night. For those that don't follow, we're not going to get into the Avs. We're not going to talk hockey here. I really want to get to more of what this means for the Nuggets. But the Avs are the best team all year. They really were the best team in hockey all year long. They get into the playoffs. They look even better than they did in the regular season. And they run into the Lightning, who were 2-time defending champs. They get off to a big lead, but then they lose Game 5, and it becomes 3-2. So now you go into Game 6. You lose at home, which felt to me like the stars had aligned for the Avs to win Game 5.
Friday.
To come home, and Friday night, and the vibes would be immaculate. They lose at home to Tampa Bay, and you kind of felt like there was a break in the fabric of the universe. Like, hold on. We saw this, how exactly this played out. So for the first time, I was nervous for Game 6, and sure enough, I had a right to be nervous. It was a slugfest.
Yeah.
And the Avs pull it out 2-1. Very impressive. Just real quick, from an Avs perspective, what is your takeaway from the game?
Well, first of all, I've never seen a team like that. Like, I don't watch hockey,
Right.
so I
Same.
don't know, but
Same.
I have to imagine that's as good as it gets.
Right.
They seemed to be, from someone who's watched pro sports my whole life, they were objectively overwhelming.
There's a Nuggets reason I want to get into all this. This is I like this. Keep going.
But this team had something to them where it seemed like they had gone through some of these tests before.
Sure.
So that Tampa loss you just referenced, I was like, oh man, it's not going to happen tonight.
Right.
But, and again, layman, not really knowing the game, I felt so sure it would. It just looked like a team who was ready to take the other team's best punch and knew they had a stronger one coming back.
It reminded me, we've compared this team to the Warriors, the 2015 Warriors, where they kind of, they're breaking on the scene. They look like they're better than everyone, but you did have this question of they're a little fancy.
Right.
They win games 5-2. And so you think, like, if a team kind of punches them in the mouth, or, for example, this, by the way, this is how crazy hockey is. Tampa Bay is a very warm weather, humid city. The Avs are really fast. If you have good ice, you skate really fast, and that advantage is multiplied. So what does Tampa Bay do? They turn that MFer up to like 80 degrees. It's sweating. Like, all the media is like, I'm sweating inside this building. It's so hot. They're skating on slush, so everybody's going like 2 miles per hour on the ice, which to me, absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. That part of hockey is what's best for our team, slush or ice? All right, slush. Let's just screw up the floor. Like, can you imagine if it was like...
Well, the Spurs turned the AC down.
It was insane that they did that.
Yeah.
To me, it remains the thing that I'm like, I can't believe we don't talk about this more, how ridiculous it was. It sounds like, again, the kind of shit on the 1960s again. It does sound like the thing you heard about back in the Bob Cousy day, where they're like, they didn't send the bus to pick them up till 10 minutes before tip-off, and they lost all their shoes, so they had to play in flip-flops. You're like, what? This is what it sounds... But the NHL somehow pulls this off. Anyway, the Tampa Bay, to me, watching them play, I was very impressed with them. They're like the Spurs. They're not flashy. They have a phenomenal goalie. They have a lot of smart players, very well coached, and they just seem like the team that's like, we're not going to beat ourselves. You're going to have to beat us. And yes, you're fast and talented and flashy, but we're tough, we're smart, we're disciplined. We just do what we do. And that's what was cool about this game for the Avs. Is they're a young team, extremely, in my opinion, analogous to the Denver Nuggets. Extremely. And I thought what we saw with the Avs was a team that had gone through some disappointing losses where they'd gotten punched in the mouth in previous seasons and had not responded, had some injuries. They weren't at full strength, but nonetheless felt like they could get over the hump, never did. And this was the year where they finally went against the top boss, the Tampa Bay Lightning, got punched in the mouth, said, no, you're not going to win 5-2 the way you always like. This would be analogous to the Nuggets. You're not going to win scoring 100 points. So can you win against a disciplined defensive team 80-85?
Right.
And that's what the Avs did last night. And I thought it was like a cool way, but maybe it was also the inevitable only way the Avs could win.
Right. And again, like learning these lessons from previous failures, right? Like that was the exact manner in which they fell short. But you always hear teams talk about those losses leading up to the success or even the beginning of a dynasty as near essential elements of what sort of taught them what it means to become a champion, which I think to some of what you're pulling on here is more than playing the best version of your game, right? It's that resiliency, that confidence, and then just knowing, because you've seen yourself do it before, that there's more than one way we can win these games. It is something, I don't know if you're ready to switch yet, it is something I think the Nuggets have been picking up a little bit of over the years. They did not get to go to the brightest timeline. We have not really gotten to see this team thrive as planned or expected due to health and other reasons. But they've had to learn how to grind and win some games in ugly ways and be different versions of a team around Jokic. And so the hope is that sort of manifests and bears fruit in a similar way, that next year they're not just talented, they're tested.
Yeah. And so that's part of what was so cool about it is this is somebody's asking in terms. It really is the Warriors, and it really is going up against like a Spurs team that's an institution. And it's like, hey, that was your final checklist. And by the way, I'm not a hockey guy. I did watch this entire playoff run. I do think the Avs are just so much better than everyone. Their best player in this playoff run is 23 years old, Cale Makar. Like, he's incredible. So you look at this and you go, they're set up not just to win, but for a dynasty. I really believe that. They are set up as if the Nuggets were to win right now, and you'd look at it and say, oh, well, Michael Porter's 24, Jamal Murray's 25, Jokic 27. If the Nuggets got over the hump this year, you would look at the Nuggets and say, why aren't they going to be better next year and the year after and after? So they're set up in that exact way. And now we get to the fact that the Kroenkes, Stan Kroenke, won with the Los Angeles Rams in January or February, I guess, won the Super Bowl. They won the hockey or the lacrosse one. Okay, we'll give them a little credit for that one. And then they win with the Avalanche. And along the lines of very similar, style of building up, where now it looks like they're set to, if not repeat, at least contend for repeat. So I look at this, and then I look at the Nuggets, and I say the Kroenkes have the MVP of the NBA. They've got a roster that may have won had they not been derailed by injuries.
Sure.
So here's my question. And I actually want to ask this of everybody. We'll put out a poll later on, but I want to ask this of everyone. Do you have more confidence right now that the Kroenkes might, I'm not going to phrase it that way, might know what they're doing in terms of how to build a contender than you did, say, 6 months ago before they had ever won one? Do you feel like, hey, maybe they had a long-term vision that is starting to, they're at that moment where they're like, hey, that's starting to pay off?
Well, there is a specific element to their approach as owners that I think has worked for them. And you've done well to identify this and articulate this. I'm not sure if into a mic yet, so sorry if I'm stealing your thunder, but there are different ways to be a bad owner. And one of the very worst ways is overbearing, too involved, not willing to delegate, make good hires, and let those people do their jobs. The Kroenkes don't do that. There is a I don't want to say laissez-faire. I guess maybe they'll hire a guy and they'll back off, and they let Sakic build this team and stick with this team and stick with this group. And we've heard Michael Malone say time and time and again that the patience that he and Tim and Josh were on the same page with was a huge element in the Nuggets being able to continue to build something. I do think from that perspective that there's a way they handled this that, bears fruit. And we just saw it. We saw it last night.
To me, I actually feel, and part of this is I kind of saw the Avs thing coming. So this isn't like a boom, one day I switched this. But this is a thing to me where I honestly do feel like they deserve a lot of credit right here. Like they deserve something that says, hey, I don't love, and by the way, this has nothing to do with the altitude not being available on Comcast. I can look at that and say, total failure.
Yeah.
Nothing to, no redeeming qualities to it. None of this or that. Total failure. It's the wrong thing that shouldn't have got to this point. I could put that in a box over here. Then I could put the box that says, do they know how to build, and are they willing to spend and do all these things that we always criticize them to build a contender? And I can look over there and say, there are still things that I don't agree with. The fact that they've waited so long to get the training facilities, the thing that they haven't always done the best job marketing a team or what have you, those are still failures. But at the end of the day, they seem to have a process for what's important in building a contender that is now starting to pay off in a way. And maybe there's a learning curve. We always talk about with players, we understand a rookie has expected value here, but their upside could be here. Coaches, I think, deserve that same leeway. Front offices members, I think, deserve that same leeway of like Calvin Booth this year. He'll probably be better in 3 or 4 years just by virtue of experience. I think ownership might be a similar thing, and we are now looking at the second decade of Kroenke ownership here in Denver. And I do wonder if there's something that says, hey, they've gone through some stuff, and now they have this vision that is thinking long. In the Hinkie era, when everybody fell in love with Sam Hinkie and 76ers, his big line was, it always pays off to have the longest view in the room. The longest view, meaning teams that make win-now decisions often compromise themselves, or hamstring themselves long-term. The Kroenkes do seem to have, with both the Avs and the Nuggets, this like 6-year vision that started once they identified their cornerstone pieces, Jokic, McKinnon, and they came up with this process for how to get there, and it's starting to pay off. So for me, I look at this and I go, they have demonstrated the ability to have a long vision, to execute a long vision, and find the right talent, and also maybe, just maybe, what is and is not important. They did spend money on the Colorado Avalanche. They're not a cheap roster. They put the chips in when the time was for it. So to me, I look at this and I go, you know what? I do think there is something to their model. Again, I'm not trying to say I stand the Kroenkes or any of this stuff.
Sure.
I'm just saying, when you look at ownerships, they to me, I think you should have a little bit of confidence in, hey, these guys want to win, they know how to win, and they've proven it at least twice in 1 year.
I mean, I think the Nuggets are going to win the title next year. And if I'm right about that, that's 3 titles in 3 leagues in 3 seasons. So
it might be 4 because you might get an Avs one before.
Yeah. And the Mammoth.
NHL
and
one.
The Mammoth.
And the Mammoth.
So
the NHL one will finish before the Nuggets next season, so they might actually be the next one to win.
I do think when wearing a Nuggets cap, there's a perspective on the Kroenkes that's slightly different than just sort of an objective look at how they are as owners.
Right.
Because they own so many properties, and we are seeing success right now. I think Nuggets fans still think they have a little more to prove in terms of, Josh said they're not the red-haired stepchild. There is no red-haired stepchild in KSE. By the way, shout out to all my redheads. That's a tough expression. But from a Nuggets perspective, I think there's still some to prove there. Like, do you care about this team?
How much of it is, though, this? The NBA is so much harder to win in than any other league. In my opinion, I think it's the single hardest league to win in.
I think that's a huge part of it. And I think when you own as many properties as they do, maybe it's easier to go. And we're in Denver. Like, LeBron's not coming here.
Right.
Let's avoid the expensive overhead. We'll catch our check from the league. And maybe we win. And I'm not saying they don't want the team to win in the meantime. Just... Again, I do think there's some catching up to do. The altitude deal, which also applies to the Avs, the practice facility, just sort of seeing them spending more on front offices and coaches, whether they have that shark tooth approach or not. So that's what I think Nuggets fans are hesitant with. But the question as you framed it, are they on to something? I mean, how many titles do they have to win before the answer is yes? I mean, It's hard for me. They certainly have ground to stand on right now.
They certainly do. And also, that investment, it is interesting for you to say that, though, about, I think the NBA is at this point, we're going to talk about this in segment 3 a lot, too, but the NBA is at this point where it's so depressing. It's so depressing just the mechanisms to win. Like, I do think Denver has made relatively few missteps over the last 7 years. They've made them, but they made relatively few. And there are teams that have made $1 million that might get paid off anyway, just by virtue of how this thing sets up. So you do always wonder, what does an owner look like from that, an emotionally removed? And we know that Stan, one of his traits is that he can be extremely emotionally removed from all of this, to both positive and to strengths and weaknesses to that approach. But you do wonder if a guy looks at that and says, yeah, it's the NBA. What do you want me to do? Like, I'll put together a good team.
Yeah, let me know when Kevin calls.
Yeah, I'll put together, oh no, we might beat them, but if we beat them, it might be kind of a little bit of dumb luck rather than like, hey, we have to exploit every margin or what have you.
Like, Jokic being the second round, it's like the most Stan Kroenke superstar.
Right.
Yeah, we'll take that. That works for us.
Stan Kroenke superstar. You're so right about that. I don't know. I'm just kind of optimistic, man. And then there is something too. I'm curious. This part I'm not optimistic about. I'm just speculating. There is something too, like, Stan gets to take a victory lap right now, and it's funny. I saw his name all over the timeline. People are so averse, by the way. Let me just say this. Young people, I think, younger than me, or right at my age and maybe slightly below, really, really don't like billionaires.
This is true.
And I understand it. I completely understand.
Do you want to unpack that for the rest of the show?
Don't really want to have to unpack that. I understand why people can be that way. And anytime you say, like, I'm sure there's people that are going to be in the chat or talk about this on Twitter, being like, oh, these people like standing a billionaire, this or that. An owner is going to be a billionaire. Like, first of all, like,
that's a good point.
You're not going to find the the nonprofit that buys the Nuggets. And
that's a good point.
It's going to be a billionaire. So now we're evaluating them on terms of like which ones are going to do a better or worse job.
I want the broke owner.
Yeah, I want the broke one. Yeah, this guy's a man of the people. So you start to evaluate them in those ways, and I just look at it and I go, I think there might be something there. But also, I do wonder if Stan Kroenke's name is all over the timeline last night. And not just from people like me who put it out there, I had that one in the chamber for a while. But it was from like ESPN, SportsCenter is tweeting out like, wow, look at Stan go. And I wonder if there is like this, that Lacob gets this when it's like light years, then everybody's talking about it. All of a sudden he's like, hey, I really am. Maybe I will spend $100 million in luxury tax payments. And I wonder if Stan gets a little bit of that of like, you start to be the guy.
Yeah.
And also you're like,
high
hey,
off your own stuff a little bit.
Yeah, like I want everyone to know I am the guy. I'm going to do this again. I want Stan at the parade to come out and say, hey, we're light years ahead of everyone.
You guys want a practice facility? This shit's going to blow your minds. I wonder. I mean, they did have the drinks out again today at the presser.
Yeah.
So that's a sign that spending's on the way back up.
We're not sure if the drinks were really out, but we grabbed
some.
They
may not have been.
They might not have been, but
You're
we
like
definitely.
2 titles later, maybe.
I love this. This is actually how you win over the media. It's not the practice facility, the
just
luxury tax, whatever. I just want what Portland has for the media food. The guy that like carves the steaks on the side.
The little beer on tap on wheels. Wheel in and out of the room.
Yeah. What's your take on this, man? Do you feel more confident here in the
I think the Nuggets are winning it. I think every Kroenke team within the next 3 years is going to have a championship.
Every Kroenke team in the next 3 years. I don't know about Arsenal. I have no idea how soccer works.
They're making investments.
Allegedly.
Really? Oh, wait. So allegedly Arsenal?
They're spending.
Arsenal?
Gabriel Jesus is a great striker. They just got him from Man City.
Oh my God.
Spending that much money on
it's going to be everybody but the Nuggets.
Use the TPE stand. Yeah, exactly. That's what. Can we get in?
Rapids have made some big top, and they're letting them do whatever they need to make the team better.
Well, there you go. So yeah, telling you don't have a mic, do you? Yeah. So yeah, telling us that he's telling us that Arsenal spending. They have some very interesting players, and he would not be surprised if they were a title contender in short order. Of course, you got the Nuggets, so maybe it is true. Maybe the 2020s, the decade of the Kroenke.
I'll tell you what, I'm eager to stop talking about it. You know, like they put their money where their mouth is. Like I'm good. You know, so
it's so funny because I honestly like. Just looking at the players available, we're going to talk more about this a little bit later and certainly throughout the week, but I think the question almost becomes like, are they going to spend a ton of money, boost that salary cap? And I kind of think they're not.
I know, me either.
They're going to be in the salary cap, but I don't think it's
in the tax, you mean?
But in the tax, but I don't think that they're going, it's for lack of like a green light. I think it's more of a just like, does it make sense to overpay for Kelly Oubre? Or is it like, do you get the same thing for a different player? So maintain flexibility. I know everybody hates this, but maintain flexibility for the deadline or even for next summer. Again, when you say you want them to go all in for this year, is there a move that allows that? I just, from talking to people, I kind of get the sense that maybe no, they're not going to do that. They still feel like they can win with what they have, but it might be more of a Bruce Brown than it is of a like,
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about an aggressive new regime, and I feel
it's their own words.
It's their own words, and I feel a little bit inclined to maybe pump the brakes on that a touch.
We'll see.
Or maybe there's some defining of terms that's lost in translation. What does aggressive mean to you?
We met Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, Vogt. That's why we were aggressive in getting him.
I'm truly confessing ignorance here. The traded player exception,
yeah.
Would that not be a very good example of them saying like, all this would cost us is more money personally.
Correct.
Let's go use it.
But again, it's $8.3 million. So
it's not.
Like and there's also only a certain amount of ways that you can trade, to acquire it. So you're still limited by, is there a player out there that fits this for what you want?
That's a good point.
And can you pull off that move? So we'll see. I don't know. Let's take a quick break, though. On the other side, we did get a chance to meet with the new rookies today, and we'll talk about what we haven't even discussed this. We came straight from it, so we'll get to kind of get each other's perspectives on those guys and what they had to say.
Almost forgot
that it was you?
Just you and me, Adam, hanging out. Ivaca TV were arguably the MVPs of the Denver sports season. Well, okay, there was the back-to-back MVP, but other than him, Ivaca TV is right up there for me because for all the credit we were willing to give the billionaires just now, the teams still weren't on TV. That's where Ivaca TV came in, though, because they have services. They have programs like Altitude Sports, AT&T, even DNVR channel on their service, and their service is available now in both Denver and Colorado Springs. How do you get it? You go to ivaca.tv/DNVR. And then you use the promo code DNVR. They're going to give you $10 off your first 3 months. It's only $15 per month for the first 3 months, plus receiver, no contract, no hidden fees. Ivaca TV, it gets the people going. It gets the sports back on your TV. Check them out. They're friends of ours, and they're doing great work. Athletic Greens is a great way to start the day. That's how I start the day when I remember to be healthy. And when I'm doing it right, that's how I start literally every day.
I feel like it's easier to be healthy in the summer.
It's so much easier to be healthy.
You don't have a hoodie to hide behind.
Yeah, that's right. You really got it. But then there's like a cycle.
I think it's the sun.
The sun. You're just like, oh man, I'm doing good things for myself.
So true.
Then the winter comes and the basketball season comes.
Just give up.
Eat M&Ms.
Totally give up. Yep.
But it's summer, so I'm having my Athletic Greens, and it's great. It's really convenient because it's everything you need in terms of supplements, vitamins, minerals, but all in one tasty drink, all in one scoop, actually. One scoop, 12 ounces of cold water. You are good to go for the day, my friends. How do you get it? Well, you can go to athleticgreens.com/nuggets, athleticgreens.com/nuggets to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance today.
All right, back here at segment 2. A lot of stuff this week. Free agency begins on Thursday. Should be a pretty eventful day, I imagine. I expect the Nuggets roster to have quite a bit of clarity by the time we head into 4th of July weekend. I certainly hope so. The Nuggets could really screw up my weekend, letting this linger into
That's a good point.
Sunday.
Yeah,
no players or anything. I got plans, man. I got plans. But today we got to meet the new rookies. Peyton Watson, Christian Braun, Ismael Kamagate, all were in town. Which, think of it, by the way, all those guys, it's always funny. All those guys have to fly in. There was no media call. Usually these guys call in or whatever or zoom in. They didn't do that this year, so today was really the first chance. And a very small contingent of media. I think the media still hung over from last night's event. So it was really like me, Vogt, and 3 other guys. Yeah. What's your overall impression, your big takeaway from talking to those guys today?
I think three guys that know what got them drafted, particularly to Denver.
That's a good point. I like that note.
I think three guys that are aware of what got them in that building and will probably get them on the floor.
Okay.
That's effort, that's defense, willingness. We heard all those words a lot today. And guys who or at least have been coached to understand that, they're not a high lottery pick in a desperate team. This isn't Houston asking you to come in and change the vibes, right?
Right.
This is what can you do to help a team turn that final corner and become champions. And of course, there's the built-in angle for Braun of being one,
right?
And now joining that pursuit.
So first notes, Ismael Kamagate. We know this because he came in for a workout, and English is going to be a work in progress.
For sure.
And honestly, one thing about stashing him abroad is, I actually think this with Jokic. I've said this on before. I actually feel like Jokic has a very small circle. People don't know this. He has a pretty small circle that he kind of entrusts, largely family and some extended family members or friends who are like family to him. And I think Jokic probably speaks Serbian 99% of the time. He is not in practice or this or that. Sure. And I do almost wonder if it's like his development as an English speaker is behind, say, a Dirk Nowitzki because of that in some ways. Ismael, I do feel, is a guy that, like, being in Paris next year, his English will probably be the same when he comes over, and he has a lot of growth there. And again, when you're a backline defender, communication is so important. Yeah. There's kind of a lot there. So just kind of one note, we knew this already, but it was very evident today every time he was asked a question. Just, he still has a work in progress there. Sizing up the guys is always an interesting one. Christian Braun is taller than me, I would say, or at least my height. So he's listed as 6'7". I would say probably 6'6". But again, that's an NBA 6'7". So that was always good to see. Peyton Watson, super long, man. Like, he was a really tall guy. He's just a really, really tall player. And so that's a big part of it. You're right that they knew why they were drafted. They all had that kind of here for defense. Like, I want to play defense. The organization has told me basically that they want me to play defense, and I thought that was important. Peyton Watson, he's done some media circuits. He's done some podcasts, some high profile podcasts. Yeah. One of the things I sort of gather from Peyton Watson, from seeing the different types of media things that he's done, and even today in talking to him and some of the relationships he has around the league, I think he has big timer status around players. Like, some guys come into the league, Jokic, unknown, great player, nobody knows him, he doesn't have any friends around the league, this or that. Peyton Watson seems to know all the players in the NBA, including Kevin Durant, who he calls a friend. Yeah,
has allegedly played, I guess he said in one of these podcasts that he's played pickup with Kyrie and Kevin Durant already. Right. I don't know if that's the case for a lot of these prospects.
It's so true. And then also there's a video of him and Paolo Banchero working out together. Now, again, I know he was a 5-star recruit, so he has that backstory. But even then, there's some guys that are 5-star recruits that are just not in that sort of circle of the like.
And for him to be that guy and then be a guy that's taken 30th overall, like it's bigger than the pick in a way. So there's some of that going to it for sure. I also think that exact angle is what makes Peyton's career, the way it's gone so far, so interesting. And one of the top things I'm trying to pick up on in terms of his mindset, this is a guy who has very quickly had to gone from talking about himself as a potential star to a role player.
Right.
And has talked about the adversity and humility he's encountered already. I'm always curious to see how players respond to that, what that teaches them, how it humbles them. And just sort of, he said a lot of the right things in terms of, for me, I know the biggest thing is just about not skipping a day, putting in that work every single day, and that those are the guys who are typically rewarded long term.
Yeah. Is it weird to say, though, he feels almost not too big for Denver, like he's going to leave or this or that, but he just seems like the people that thrive in Denver, the Gallinaris, the Jokic's, even to some extent Murray and Porter or whatever, they're guys that just seem to not have those connections in spades. You know what I mean? Like, they almost, and because they don't care. They're just like, hey, I'm in here in Denver.
Yep.
I go do my own life or this. And Peyton, again, it's a small note. I don't want to make a big deal.
It may not matter.
It may not matter at all. Actually, maybe it's a positive thing. I'm just saying he seems like a guy that is just very well connected.
Yeah, not in terms of personality, but status. Like, he's more Michael Porter than Jokic by a lot, right? It's almost
everybody
like
knows who
Denver's small and contained. And when Porter fell to 14, that was like a national story falling its way into Denver. And there's a little bit of that with Peyton for sure.
It is, it is interesting too. again, not it's always this stuff. We got to talk about this stuff just because it's interesting. I don't want anybody to blow it out of proportion.
Sure.
I always love asking young players who they model their game after. And I have always joked, the guy I always go to is Zana Musa. He's Kobe Bryant 2.0 or whatever, right? Like that's who it is.
I
like,
looked you in the eyes when he said that.
and you just think to yourself, like, okay, does this guy know like what he is or does he not?
Yeah.
Peyton Watson, I asked him, everybody knows about your defensive upside, but offensively, like, is there a player who you feel like most similar to? And he said Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
3 points per game last year at UCLA. I know there's circumstances here, but pardon me, and I've watched
Long
some
way
of
to
it.
go.
Yeah, I watched some of this, and like, I'm high on Peyton Watson's upside. I really like him as a player. I really think there's something there. If you talk about a project, which is what he is, there's something there. There's some pieces there. Kevin Durant was like the most fluid 7-footer that we've ever seen. You know, that wasn't a guy like.
This is like scoring. He was dropping 30 and 20s at Texas.
If you asked me my basketball comp and I told you it was like De'Aaron Fox, you'd be like, Adam, I've seen you walk. Yeah. There's no way you run like that.
I've
like
seen you walk.
Yeah, there's
That's
no
enough.
way. Yeah, like come on, man. Like, I'm Boris Diaw. That's
Right.
like my comp, right? So, it's just one of those things. He said Paul George and Kevin Durant. Now he did say those guys that have length, defense, playmaking, and scoring, and he put it in that order. So again, like he's talking more specifically about a tall player who has the handle and can do this or that. But I just thought that was an interesting thing to me that like in his mind he's trying to become Paul George and Kevin Durant.
Yeah, so maybe a little bit more than just that role player thing. It's not exactly setting the bar at like Robert Covington, but again,
Beauchamp that we asked who his comps were, and he gave
said
like
Herb Jones.
Herb Jones and Mikal Bridges. Like
that guy was trying
again,
to get drafted by Denver.
maybe
hard.
that's what it was.
Almost works.
You might be right.
But yeah. So we'll see. But I mean, that's the thing about this guy, this kid. I'm old. He
might be. He might. I don't know if kid. I don't know.
I'm 29.
Yeah.
Can I? Whatever.
This young man
It's about the defense, but it's the potential is not just defense. This is a consensus 5-star recruit. This is a guy who has a lot of tools. This is a guy who is apparently already in with Kevin Durant, and I just don't think he's a scrub if that's the case.
I'm not locking this answer in because it's still too early. I think he's the most interesting player at Summer League. I think he's my number one guy I'm most interested in. Part of it is like Christian Braun. I know what he. I think I know what he can do.
We're getting from him, right?
And if he had a bad Summer League, it wouldn't really mean anything that much to me. If he had a Zeke Naji Summer League, it might. But if he had like just like a regular like, hey, that was underwhelming. Whatever. It doesn't mean anything. Peyton Watson. If he has a bad one, I don't think it means anything like, oh, the sky is falling by any means, although it wouldn't be encouraging. You'd be like, okay, we're starting from a low base. But if he has a good Summer League, if he's a guy that all of a sudden you see some of this pop and he's like guarding every lottery pick, he's guarding him and shutting him down and having an impact. And if his offense, you go, oh, I didn't realize he has X, X, and X that he can do. You know, he can do these types of things on the offensive end. To me, I think it might be the guy who most ignites the fan base as, oh, this is intriguing. Look at this guy.
Well, sure. I mean, he just has the most question marks around him.
Right.
Maybe Kamagate, but again, it's a different equation that far late in the draft. So, again, like with Braun, I think whether you're excited about it or not, you probably have a better sense of how this pick's going to go, or at least what he's going to look like right away. And I think Watson is also, they traded a future first to get this pick to take Watson. So I think naturally the reaction is going to be, you must really like this kid. I want to see why.
Right.
He's intriguing, and there's no doubt he's intriguing. He's really confident. He reminds me a bit of PJ Dozier talking to the media.
Yeah, he does.
Just
low voice,
looks you in the eyes, low voice.
He has a PJ Dozier look to him. They're in the same stylistic
out,
wheelhouse.
Real confident. Like, I don't think any of this, to the point you were making earlier, is going to be too big for him.
Right.
I'm intrigued.
I will say all three of them presenting themselves as workers, which I like too. Like sometimes that was one of the things is, what are you excited for? I'm just excited for the work. Like I love the work part. Like I want to get in and start working. We want to start practicing right away.
Right.
You know, and even Ismael, who I think is very much in that wheelhouse. And by the way, it's one of the things I've heard about him, a very good worker.
Yeah.
You know, a guy that doesn't mind being in the lab, putting in time. So,
and by the way, we're not going to talk about him as much because asking him any sort of interesting question kind of felt like throwing him more a grenade than a bone because of the language stuff. And B, because of that, we probably only picked up so much. But I did think his answers were good. Like, this is a guy who's talked a lot about defense.
He's also going to be the most lovable guy. He actually kind of reminds me of Nene's first year. When Nene was a rookie, the OGs might remember this. Nene sang Jingle Bells one time. You know how they'll do the little media day thing? They had him sing Jingle Bells, but he kept screwing it up. So he kept having to start over. And he'd be like, hold on.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, like he's gonna do, like Kamagate has that. He has
He's
a
got
great smile, a perma smile. Like he almost can't stop.
Always smiling.
And he just has like a great presence to him. So I'm excited. I think he's going to be a fan favorite
If he ever
to that
me
to that
too,
extent.
man. I'm excited about that pick. I think they are too. I don't know if that was one they expected to have a shot at, but it was a guy they liked. So
Right. He should be interesting. And for Summer League, I actually am super intrigued to get to watch him. Number choices. Oh, one other thing. Monte Morris, this might be the first draft.
Oh,
the first draft of the Monte Morris era where nobody knew Monte Morris. I asked him, who on the team do you already know? Christian Braun said basically Michael Porter and no one else. None of the other guys had known anyone. Ismael, by the way, in his workout said that he knew Peter Cornely, and he actually talked about how he had talked about him. But nobody else, so it's just an interesting thing. The first draft that Monte Morris has not like intimately known somebody.
I had that note as well. That's the Monte question. That's what people are really asking. Has Monte reached out to you yet?
Right, has Monte reached out? Nobody had reached out to either Christian or Peyton Watson for whatever it's worth. And again, not that it's a big deal. Yoke's in Serbia, time change, this or that. But it is one of those things where, like, Draymond Green certainly texts everybody that gets drafted by the Warriors the night they get drafted.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like, there is a thing there. And so hearing that was not a big deal, but it was one of those things where I'm like, that's a bummer. Maybe somebody just ask Calvin Booth, hey, you guys have this number? I want to reach out.
On a lighter note, Brown did say he already saw Mike in there working this morning.
Oh, yeah, Mike. Hey, that was a good detail. I forgot about that. Michael Porter in Ball Arena today getting some workout. So
we haven't seen many videos. Is Michael moving in silence this offseason?
Oh, my gosh. Is he like lasagna?
Oh, man.
That's
Growing up.
A real
That's
G.
right.
Very excited for that. All right, last but not least, a first look at what appears to be, actually, you can look at my Twitter if you want and pull up the picture if you want. What appears to be the chosen numbers, and they're actually all interesting. Peyton Watson, number 8. Christian Braun, number 0. Kamagate, number 14. Let's start in reverse order. Kamagate, 14.
It's a better number than I thought he was going to get. I thought it was going to be like a, I don't know.
97?
Yeah, like he's a stash. You know what I mean? 14, more relevant. 0. What do we think of 0?
Hold on. 14, I just want to, you don't think, like, Gary Harris to me, like, we are in an era, because I looked this up. You got 14, you've got Robert Pack. Okay, you've got Michael Adams. These are classic Denver Nuggets. And then you get Gary Harris, who we're still in the Gary Harris era, even though it's over. Everybody that's been watching the Nuggets since Gary Harris, they're still watching the Nuggets. So to me, him going number 14 to me was like, oh, interesting. Nothing?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's much.
You don't think Gary Harris has a number that maybe, it's not that you retire it, but that you just give a little bit more time?
Well, there are still probably a lot of number 14 jerseys in Ball Arena that don't say Kamagate on the back.
That's so true. Do you think we'll ever see a Gary Harris tape over Kamagate?
Yes.
You think we will? We'll see it. No. Somebody's going to pull that move off and tag us. Also, is this a sign that the Nuggets are not going to be targeting Gary Harris in the offseason?
Yeah, that between that and that ship just having sailed already and us all needing to move on, yeah, I think it's probably time.
If we go back to Peyton Watson here, number 8. Nuggets to have worn number 8. Bison Dele. Chris Herron, Earl Watson, Dermar Johnson, Danilo Gallinari, most notably. I think he's the most famous number 8. And then Jared Vanderbilt. What do we think about the choice of number 8?
Jared Vanderbilt.
That's who you think of? Not Gallo?
No. I just every time I think too much about Jared Vanderbilt. But Gallo, yeah, that's well. Look, he's a good confluence of fan favorite and actually really good.
Who's that? Gallo. Oh yeah,
I think that's a
for
good.
Sure,
Sure. First of all, for a number 30 pick, that'd be a great outcome.
It'd be insane.
Yeah, that's a good number.
Can I tell you what it really is?
Yeah.
Where's Peyton Watson from? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
Long Beach.
Okay.
From Long Beach. He's from L.A. Number 8.
Oh.
This is a Kobe number. This is a 1,000% Kobe pick.
I don't like it anymore.
Now all of a sudden you hate it. You don't want it. Come on, doesn't
change my mind.
By far the most interesting one to me. By far. And I actually kind of hate it. Christian Braun going with number 0. I should have asked him. I talked to him today, just introduced myself. I should have asked him why number 0. Famous Nuggets to wear number 0. Of course we remember Emmanuel Mudiay. That's who I think of. Isaiah Thomas also rocked it. JaMychal Green also rocked it. Emmanuel Mudiay. He takes Emmanuel Mudiay's number. What do you think here?
No, I love it.
Whoa!
It's not a curse number.
We're going to flip the number 0.
He was a bad prospect.
You're like, you know what? I don't think it was the number that failed
I don't think it was
Mudiay.
the number. You know, Christian, you have the power. Change our perception.
Is it weird that because we've been following this team so closely, like 14, Gary Harris's number, 0, that's Emmanuel Mudiay's number 15. That's Melo's. No, it's not. It's Jokic's number. Like that one should be the weirdest one, and to me, I'm like, it's not weird.
It's not weird at all.
But Gary Harris, hey.
Yeah. Whoa.
What do you like? What do you think of my idea to like not retire a jersey, but to like put a hold on?
A hold on it?
I kind of like the idea of like, hey, Gary, we're not going to retire your jersey.
Yeah, I like that.
You had 2 elite years. We're going to have a 2-year.
It's going to be like 2-3 years.
No, 2. You had 2 great years. You have a 2-year hold on it.
I think you're onto something with that.
Emmanuel Mudiay, you were bad 1 year. You're immediately, we can go to it. I kind of like it.
I don't know. I have a confession. I don't think about jersey numbers very
You
much.
don't?
I don't.
In baseball, do you?
Not really, no.
In football?
No.
Yeah, here. Are you with this?
I don't put much stock into it, but I know other people do.
I think like jersey numbers are cool when they're really good. But
Yeah.
when they're rookies, I really don't care. Like,
When they're rookies, you don't care?
no, I care like when they become something. Like Jokic 15 is like amazing. Like that's the best number you can ever have now.
Yeah.
23
Jokic
didn't
15.
mean 23 didn't mean anything until Michael Jordan came along.
Yeah, all right. All right, so if they have a chance to make the number 0 mean something here, or the number 8 in Denver, well, we'll see.
I'm excited.
Do you
to see these guys play.
Do you remember, by the way, I brought this up today when we were at I don't know if you were there, we were talking with other media members. Every year you have the jersey, right? And you hold it up. Some years they have not, I don't remember what year it was. It might have been the Michael Porter year where they didn't have a number. Instead it said 18 for being drafted in 2018 or something.
Yeah.
But usually they'll have a jersey and you hold up. 2017, the Tyler Lydon, Trey Lyles draft. Do you remember it at all? No jerseys. They all collectively held one flag, a Denver Nuggets flag. We should have known,
in hindsight,
man. We should have known.
It was clear.
We should have known.
They were not excited about those picks.
It was because, it was actually because that was the year the Nuggets rebranded and got new
that's
jerseys.
right. So they didn't have them yet.
And that was coming like a week later.
Right.
So they didn't want to they didn't want them to hold the old jerseys. So they held a
just
flag, and
held
it
a
was like the
flag.
worst presser ever.
Oh, God.
Anyway, there you go. All right, let's take a break. On the other side, let's talk about the latest rumblings about the Denver Nuggets, but equally and maybe even more importantly, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant might be shifting the balance of power in the NBA. We'll talk about that as well.
Well, someone's
We
gotta
have
talk
to.
about it.
Somebody's got to
We'll
do
take
it.
up the
Yeah.
mantle. You know what's cool? Rugby. You know what's cooler? How much people in Colorado love it, particularly in Glendale, also known as Rugbyville, USA. It's also the home of the American Raptors. Excuse me, Rugby Town, USA. The American Raptors are athletes who compete at the highest level of their respective sports: football, basketball, baseball. We're just talking about athletic folk who wanted to try a new game. They got it together with the American Raptors. They're playing rugby now. They went 5-5 in their first season. That's not bad. They're looking to improve on that, and they want you to come out and enjoy what they have to offer. Best thing about American Raptors game, they are free, free.com. Head over to the AmericanRaptors.com and grab your ticket for the upcoming season. If you can't make the game, they also stream them. Nice and easy. Turns out you really like rugby, you want to learn more about it, you got to check out the DNVR Rugby podcast hosted by Colton Strickler. You can get that wherever you get your pods. DraftKings Sportsbook is America's top-rated sportsbook. And, whoa, we've got a new read. The calf slicer, the Peruvian necktie. There are tons of ways to come out on top in the octagon, Adam. And for UFC 276, there's one more. With DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC, new customers can bet $5 on any fighter to win and get $100 in free bets, win or lose. We call that a no-brainer here because you'd have to have no brain not to make that bet. They're trying to give you free money. With DraftKings same-game parlays, you can turn another small bet into a big payday. You know how that works by now. Make sure you download the DraftKings Sportsbook app right now. Use promo code DNVR. Bet $5 on any UFC 276 fighter to win and get $100 in free bets no matter what. That's Go DNVR this Saturday at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Oh, man. Oh, there it is. Download DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DNVR. Blah, 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 blah. You guys get it. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Bonus comprised of first deposit bonus and a first bet match, each up to $500. Deposit bonus requires 25 times playthrough. Restrictions do apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700.
I see Benjamin Heyman is in the chat saying more about Braun. What did he have to say? These pressers are not super content rich, to be honest with you. In fact, I was talking to my colleague Matt Moore earlier today saying, hey, are you going to go down? He's like, no, those are usually a waste of time. Look, there are a good chance. The things that we shared were the things that we had curated from the interview today that we found to be the most interesting. So if there wasn't something in there, honestly, it was probably because there just wasn't. It wasn't a thing where you're going to get a lot of caged answers. In fact, I was joking with some of the people today, in the front office. They're kind of like, yeah, like they did a great job of like sharing the company line or whatever, just kind of making this little tongue-in-cheek remark. So it's not exactly a content-rich one. I will say they're in town. They're going to be in town next week as they get ready for Summer League, which, by the way, begins on Friday, a week from Friday. We're going to be out there in Las Vegas covering it. And on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, I suspect we will be talking to these guys. So they'll go through practice.
Right.
We'll get to hear about how practice went and speak to them over the course of that. And I think that'll be a much more interesting interview session than these ones were. These are about arriving in Denver. What do you think of the city? What's your experience? Those kind of things.
And I also have found it easier to talk to newer, younger players in those more relaxed kind of environments. Like this one is, there's cameras, there's lights, we're all there. It's in a big room. And these guys are understandably a bit nervous. They'd rather not mess up the interview than share something insightful.
Right.
That will change over time.
Some quick notes here. Jamal Murray spotted with Team Canada. Do you have this picture there? Yeah, here made its way around the interwebs. Jamal Murray is spotted in actual gear for Team Canada.
Wow.
It's kind of exciting. Now, it doesn't look like he's working out. Doesn't look like anything there. But it is kind of cool to see that he's been around some of these other great players from Canada. They're fielding a very nice team. And just another hint of a sign of how, him being closer to actually playing like live basketball.
Man, you push this so far out of your mind, that it's, oh man, the next time they play, he'll be playing. And seeing this is actually getting me really excited, man.
Along these same lines, talked a lot to people in the front office over the weekend. One sense I get is that I don't think Monte Morris ends up getting traded. It's not that he can't be or that he won't be or that they've said this or that. But I think that one of the incentives they have not to trade him is that Jamal Murray, even with a full summer off, when he gets back and starts working out and the season begins in October, I don't think he's going to be 100%. And I don't think that they're going to even test it out. I think that they view next year, certainly the first several months of the year, as him ramping up. So the Jamal Murray you get in October is almost certainly not going to be bubble Murray, prime Jamal Murray.
Sure.
And part of that is having a Monte Morris there, especially in the regular season. You think about Monte, phenomenal regular season player for the Nuggets. I think he's a really good player even in the playoffs. But for Denver, maybe the reason you would trade Monte is to add more length and defense. Maybe you need his point guarding and offense a little bit less. But if you need to get through the season and you're thinking about Jamal Murray as a 20 to 25 minute per game player in October, November, December, Monte Morris is as good as it gets. He's proven that he can be a starting caliber point guard, and being able to play him 25 minutes himself or maybe even 30 minutes, that's a huge luxury. Whereas if you traded him for, say, a good defensive player, again, I don't think this is a one-to-one trade, Monte, but if you traded Monte for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, your defense would get better, certainly a better move for your playoffs.
Sure.
But if you don't have Jamal, if you're trying to rest Jamal every back-to-back and play him 20 minutes a night, KCP probably gives you a little bit of problems as your backup point guard.
And these are some of the factors that can help inform the decisions of, do we do this now? Do we wait to the deadline? Do we do it at all? And I know folk get a little antsy with that second option, waiting to the deadline, because value can tank, things can change, right? Uncontrollable factors can change. But in this case, it makes a ton of sense for this reason. If there's any more value to extract out of Monte, particularly in Denver, it's what you just outlined. And then, if he looks good in that role again, maybe that's a deadline move, or you don't have to move him at all, depending on how things are going. But
I do think if the Nuggets went into the playoffs next year with Bones and Monte as your backup 1-2, and then like Jamal Murray and defensive shooting guard X, if that's your four-guard rotation, I do think Denver's odds of winning the championship next year would be lower than what I would expect. I do think that there is a move on from Monte. Like, I would be surprised if he was still on the roster past there and I felt like it was a good move, if I was buying into it. So he might still be on the roster. I'm just saying I would expect if he doesn't get traded this week or next week,
it's a deadline play.
Then I think the deadline is the next most likely scenario, and it might be a good one. Speaking of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, we floated out a lot the idea of a Will Barton-Kentavious Caldwell-Pope trade. We know that there were rumors that was a deal that was maybe available at the deadline this last year, or maybe even in the summer of last summer. Didn't get done. I've heard that I don't expect that deal. That I think that deal is probably less likely now. Not that Will Barton, I still think he is probably the most likely player to be moved. You look at Jeff Green, you look at Will Barton, probably the two that I would say are the most likely on the roster to be traded. And then as you go down the line, maybe a Zeke Naji, a Monte Morris, a Bones Highland, I think all those players are options, although I would be more surprised if either of those guys got traded.
Sure.
But the idea of a Will Barton for KCP 1-to-1 swap, I think, is probably less likely than maybe even I would have thought, say, 2 weeks ago.
Look, people keep laughing at me when I say this too, but the idea of a Barton deadline flip isn't terrible to me either.
Oh man, to me it is.
He's got good first thirds of the season though.
Yeah,
in him.
yeah.
And so just in terms of maybe playing that value up.
What would the fan base do if Will Barton is on the roster? If like the moves
they would flip out.
They would flip out. And I think, and look, we know the columnists who can, the columnists sometimes can write the pieces, even when the Avs end up going 16-4. Every one of those 4, they're going to write the piece about how the goalie's not it, the coach is not it, the superstar chokes. They're going to write all these articles. They're going to have a lot of ammo. Every single week if Barton is on the roster and they're like, hey, no, we like him as the starting 2. Even if it does end up making sense, even if it is the right play, it would be such a crazy thing to happen that I think it would even be a distraction.
Possible. It's possible, man. Here's what I wouldn't rule out. He plays, he has a good first third of the season, and some other team's like, oh, wow, we want that guy on our team.
Even if it is the right move, I just don't know that you can invite that distraction. I think it would be too wild of a distraction. By the way, you also get into the point where Will Barton is one of your best trade pieces on an expiring deal. You go into the season, he's old, he's 31. You go into the season, he pulls a hamstring.
Yeah, that's true.
All of a sudden, you can't trade him.
This is very true. That's actually the best point. That is actually the best point.
You don't think my best point was just that it would be so distracting and so like negative?
No.
You just invite.
You know what they would probably do? Continue to win a bunch of regular season games with Will Barton on their roster, and then they would trade him.
It's so true. Anyway, I do expect Will Barton to be the most likely player moved. I don't know that it's going to. My sense is, I think the Nuggets have a green light to spend good amounts of money next week or this week. I don't expect them to. I think there's always a chance. I just don't expect them to. I think you look at it and you think, for me, we'll get into some more of these. Wind, I know, has a big board of free agent targets out there. A guy like Bruce Brown, to me, sounds like the best high-end deal. Like, I know that doesn't sound like a high-end deal. People are thinking, like, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, like, these are names. I don't think it's going to be that stat, although you never know. Crazy things happen. Sure. Players become available. Sure. Deals happen that nobody's seen coming even at this point. But I have a feeling that this week is going to feel a lot more underwhelming than what I think a lot of people expect. But hey, if you had a Bruce Brown, if you trade Jermichael Green and are able to either sign a free agent or make a trade that brings in a player that has that level of impact but at a different position, I'll be pretty confident in the Nuggets next year.
Me too. To be honest, I think that's why I never really understood the sort of framing of like, get ready for fireworks. Because A, I don't think they're coming, and B, I don't think they're necessary. Do
you think that they might have positioned themselves in a bad light?
Yes. By making prudent moves.
That's what I mean is like, you know, one of the things we heard from Tim Conley, Michael Malone, and Calvin Booth between the end of the season and now has all been, we're going to be aggressive. We're willing to take big swings. We're willing to, go all in. It's win or bust. Like, it's all in. And then if you do make a move and it's like, all in, Bruce Brown. Great player. That might be the best move, but that's just weird branding. It's weird positioning to say it.
That's precisely what I mean. And so then you sort of have to guard yourself against the reaction against the framing as opposed to the moves in a vacuum.
They need a branding team. You know, this is what, if I'm meeting with them and it's like, hey, we know the play, we know here, I'd say, here's what you say. You say, we don't feel like we need big swings to make this a championship team. What we need is unsexy. We might not win the press conference,
that's correct,
but there are unsexy moves out there where we might lose a little scoring.
That's right.
But we're going to bring in, and this is how you position it. And then also when you bring in Bruce Brown,
you're like, that's what I'm talking about.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
That's what I'm talking about.
When you bring in Gary Payton and everyone's
man.
looking at the stats and they're saying, hey, 6 points a game.
Sure.
Like, what are you talking about? Like, hey, we said unsexy.
As opposed to right now, it's aggressive and like, this is just the world we live in. Who's in the rumor cycle right now? Kyrie and Kevin Durant.
Well, that brings us to our top story. Actually, it's our bottom story today. It's our bottom story, which we're going to round it out with. Guys, we've seen this disaster playing out in slow motion in Brooklyn with, I don't know if you noticed, but Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant were swept by the Boston Celtics in the playoffs. They were absolutely swept. It is embarrassing that they got swept. Actually, first of all, I shouldn't say the playoffs. They were in the play-in. They got their way. They dug their way out of that, got to the playoffs, played the number one team, and then got absolutely murdered. Turns out I've actually heard this, not that you need to hear this, you can just like open your eyes, but I've actually heard this from very reliable sources that the Nets, even halfway through the season, were like, we're not doing this again.
Right.
We're not doing this. And it's not because he sat out, Kyrie Irving sat out. It's that You saw the reports. Kyrie Irving at one point, apparently they go through practice and then he says, all right, coaches, get out of here. Now it's time for my practice. Like, I'm going to have another practice. Like, if you can imagine what it's like as a coach to have your people disregard you that much as in, hey, you get out now. We're going to do our own thing. The Brooklyn Nets, and Windhorst said this, I believe this morning, said the Nets have met and they said, even if it costs us Kevin Durant, which it almost certainly would, if Kyrie leaves
that much,
even if Kyrie leaves, we just can't do it. If it costs us KD, we can't do it. So here we are at an impasse where it certainly feels like by the end of the week, Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving will be on different teams. Kyrie Irving, rumored, Woj is putting this out here now. Woj, very good reporter. I don't doubt his information. But sometimes he puts these reports out specifically, especially when they're attached to the Lakers and LeBron James, specifically with some kind of ulterior motive. And one of the things he said today was that the only team in the entire NBA that has interest in Kyrie Irving is none other than the Los Angeles Lakers. Well, they can acquire him two ways.
But
go ahead.
But the Nets aren't particularly interested in that trade offer.
But what does this sound like? Doesn't this sound like the old first step of this happening? And sometimes
the public negotiating.
Public negotiating, but sometimes it's the final negotiating. I think it's true that nobody is right now calling Brooklyn saying, hey, we want Kyrie in earnest. And I think the Lakers probably are saying, hey, we want to get this done. We have Russell Westbrook, which is, I mean, you're basically holding a ransom right now saying like, will you take this albatross contract with like no assets to get rid of a very good player who you just happen to hate and want to get rid of? It's a hilarious situation other than the fact that it absolutely sucks. First of all, would you be worried of a Kyrie, LeBron, AD team? Knowing how distracting
more
that
worried
team is?
than I am now, like with them with Russ. We saw that's just not going to happen. That current trio, but I wouldn't be. I wouldn't change my mind about the landscape and who could win it. You know, the Lakers, I think, would be back in it just from a talent perspective, but talk about a volatile situation and all the ways it could go poorly.
So volatile.
There's like 100 paths to that being a disaster. So, no, that wouldn't terrify me. In fact, part of me, I kind of hope it does happen and then it tanks because there's a little bit of you all deserve each other thing going on for me here.
Here's the thing about that team is I do think it's like the Brooklyn Nets this year and that their upside is so ridiculous that they might not play all year. They'll be so annoying. They'd be the top story every single day and we'd have to sit and listen to them like painfully. It would be the worst. The Nets, at least, like people kind of forgot about them. Nobody ever forgets about the Lakers. They would lead SportsCenter every single day in a way that would be so annoying. And then they might just coalesce in the playoffs, and because they're so talented, it could, in theory, work in a way that would be the worst, the absolute worst. That being said, I do think it's one of those 8 out of 10 times it works out exactly like it did in Brooklyn, where
me
it's
too,
like,
man. Me too.
So whatever. The bigger piece of this is Kevin Durant,
Agreed.
who, Kevin Durant leaving Brooklyn, he is on I believe he has 4 years left on a max deal. Like that's every team in the league would give up an enormous amount for him. Like if. So I look at that one and I go, right now we just ranked on our draft show. We ranked the players in the teams in the Western Conference, and I put Denver number 2. Kevin Durant can single-handedly change all of this.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that.
And that's the part of this that I think is the most interesting. Now, I don't know if he's going to come west, stay in the east, stay in Brooklyn. Who knows how this all plays out? But I do look at that and say that is that curveball that when we look and talk about title, is the title window open for Denver, this or that? Like KD can single-handedly swing that.
I agree. And that is the thing I'm holding my breath on, because to this point of the conversation, it felt like any short-term or long-term threat out west, Denver at least has they can say we're on some level we're prepared for this.
Right.
We think we can go head-to-head with this. If you're talking about, and I do think this league in a lot of ways this is probably the most naive thing I'll ever say, and I'm probably wrong. Getting a little bit past some of this stuff. The Kyrie KD drama. We hoped. And this is not, and I feel so good about, like, we almost escaped it all. We just need to survive this KD thing, because I agree he could go somewhere that A, changes the landscape, but B, brings us right back to this really annoying super team kind of constant conversation.
Where would be the most annoying place he could wind up? It's got to be the West, I think, just because you'd have to deal with them.
Yeah, I mean,
Boston would be really annoying, though. If you do end up getting this like Boston story, that would be pretty bad.
Yeah, dude, I would hate that.
Him and Jason Tatum, teammates. Which one's the number one?
Well, that's not hard to figure out.
I'm just saying.
Kevin's like, dude, shoot that ball one more time. Watch what I do.
How about Minnesota?
Minnesota. I just wouldn't worry about that. Dallas?
I'm just saying it would be annoying to have to be like the
Dallas? Does Dallas feel like the team that...
There's no way he's going to play with Luka.
Yeah, you're right.
There's no way he's playing with Luka. Portland would be way up there.
Portland.
Portland would be like a really annoying place.
That's probably the answer.
What about the Clippers who don't seem to care about spending? If there's like a mechanism by which they can make their big three the most obnoxious wings. Denver has 0 wings. Meanwhile, they have KD, Kawhi, and Paul George.
I kind of can't explain it, but if the Clippers sacrificed the team they have now to add KD, I'd be like, give me that team immediately. In the first round. I don't care.
New Orleans.
They'd be really good.
Zion, straight up.
But you know what? That wouldn't annoy me so much.
Because it's New Orleans?
Yeah, like whatever. I'm a big fan of the fantasy. It almost never shakes out this way.
Yeah.
Of like one of the best players in the league saying, you know what sounds appealing to me right now? Going to this shitty org and trying to
Right. What about Memphis then in that same regard? We said this the other day. I've turned on Memphis. I'm no longer a fan.
Yeah, I told you earlier, I have the most old get off lawn my take. I wanted to see them humbled.
I don't like them either. I'm out.
Yeah, I wouldn't like that either, but I'm not worried about that one happening.
Really? They're kind of recruiting him. They're trying to get him.
Actually, and they have a lot of assets. I probably should be.
Yeah, you should be a little worried about them. And then the last one, Miami, maybe the most likely. I think DraftKings has them as the most likely to.
Yeah.
Oh, Phoenix is number 1. Are you kidding me? God, that would be the worst. You're right. Phoenix.
I kind of, you know what's happening? I've been enjoying this month where I don't have to acknowledge the Suns' existence.
I know. It's been great.
At all.
We did. That's how quickly we moved on. The Suns,
who cares about the Suns?
The Suns turned into like the Jazz or Clippers to us, where we're like, oh, those losers.
Fellas. That's cute.
Suns. Oh, Philly would be worried. Oh, crap. How come every team now?
Who would break each other first and faster, KD or Philly?
Can you imagine James Harden leaving that team and then getting stuck with KD again? It'd be so annoying. Oh, I hate everything.
We are so close to this, like looking at the Nets, the Lakers.
Oh, it all falling apart and that's being moved on.
Some of the Sixers being like, whatever, man, you made that bed. You sleep in it. That's fine with me. But we're this decision away. We got to survive it.
You're right. If this hits perfectly, it might be the death knell for this stupid way of building a team and the stupid legacy building.
I want to let you guys know that DK just moved the odds for DeAndre Ayton's new team to be Brooklyn. They were at plus 100. They're not at plus 300.
Oh, no. DeAndre Ayton's odds to go to Brooklyn just skyrocketed.
It can also mean something about KD.
Oh, of course.
This league
sucks.
You guys down on Championship Monday.
Championship Monday. I hate it here. All right. Well, that does it for our Monday edition. Harrison Wynn's gone all week. D-Line is gone all week. You're stuck with us. Tomorrow, Dev will be joining us for the show. We're going to be breaking down free agency targets. We'll talk to you then.